Okay, good evening, folks. Thanks for joining us again on this dark and slightly wet night. Thanks to Ajamu and Matthew for joining us this evening. Welcome. Where are you guys at the moment? Ajamu?
I am in dark London, Brixton.
Yeah.
Hi, Malcolm.
Matthew?
I'm on Sky at the minute. It's dark here
Sky.
too. It's also,
Yeah.
the sky is also dark.
Okay. You maybe tell us a little bit more about that later on, but just very briefly, in terms of the format for this talk and this evening, Matthew and Ajamu will be in conversation for about 45 minutes or thereabouts. Then we will go to some questions which you can send in via the comments on the Facebook event page itself. The questions will be forwarded on to Matthew from my colleague John, who's working behind the scenes at the controls. So these will be selected, and we may not be able to answer all of them if there are indeed many questions. We'll also hopefully hear from a couple of other people who have worked with Ajamu at various points in the talk. You don't need to wait for the Q&A before you post a question, because it will go into a queue if you like. But do let us know who you are and where you are, and exchange comments as you feel. And share on with other people, either now or post-talk itself. Introductions though, Ajamu, otherwise known as Ajamu X, is an artist, an archive curator and an activist. He is best known for his photography exploring the black male body and same-sex desire, and much of his practice focuses upon documenting the lives and experiences of black LGBTQ people in the UK. But it is much wider than that too, in terms of making visible the faces and the stories of black, African and Caribbean individuals. His work has been shown in galleries, museums and alternative spaces in places near and far: New York, London, Berlin, Amsterdam, Senegal. Recent work was included in Get Up, Stand Up Now, Generation of Black Creative Pioneers. And that was on at Somerset House in London in 2019. In the same year, Ajamu had work in the Hayward Gallery's Kiss My Genders group exhibition. He's no stranger to Scotland, I have to say. Undertook a residency through Glasgow's Gallery of Modern Art in 2009. As part of its pioneering Shout programme, which led to the exhibition Familiar Strangers, Portraits by Ajamu X, whose underlying themes explored the cultural politics around race, sexual orientation and exclusion in Scotland. He undertook a residency at street level in 2011, which then led to the exhibition Future Histories, celebrating the Scottish diaspora, and we will hear something about that very soon. That was shown alongside a solo exhibition by Peter Shah, who was also one of the artists recipients of a residency at the time. They kicked off Black History Month in 2012, I should say, with a civic reception. Interestingly, Ajamu dedicated his residency research and the work to the artist Maud Salter. And again, we will hear a little bit more about that. And that partnership led to even greater and fruitful outcomes. 2017, Ajamu undertook the Queer Champions project through Outspoken Arts, which again celebrated Scotland's cultural diversity. It was shown in the Scottish Parliament, I believe. And that was done with the Equality Network, and ourselves, Street Level, were one of the minor partners within that project. Matthew Arthur Williams is an artist working in photography, film and sound, currently based in Scotland, albeit he's in Skye right now. But his work's been exhibited in various venues and places in the UK, including Transmission Gallery in Glasgow, solo exhibition at Minus in Glasgow in 2017, and in Ambit Photographies from Scotland in 2019. And you can hear Matthew discuss his project in Ambit on our YouTube channel. Some of his photographs were also seen in Alberta Little's solo exhibition at Dundee Contemporary Arts very recently, 2019. Your recent projects include a collaborative Lux Scotland and BBC Now and Next commission shot film called, I think, PR and Us.
PR for
made
us.
with Christian. Right, okay. Noel Charles, yes, thank you for the correction there. You also recently undertook a hospital field autumnal residency in 2019, and also a residency in the Isle of Egg in 2020, coordinated by the Bothy Project in collaboration with Transmission. And I think, in fact, Ajamu was one of your mentors, shall we say, within that project. You've also published a number of self-produced books and zines. I think there's one just out or just on the cusp of coming out, and you can mention that later on and we'll share it in the comments feed. But you also regularly DJ under the moniker of Jungle Hussey. Yeah, is that the right pronunciation?
Yeah. Slightly, yeah. It's fine.
Yeah. So, okay, well, I'd like to just pass it on to yourselves now, Matthew and Ajamu, and I will disappear from view, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that kind introduction.
Yes, thank you very much.
We've been talking about this talk for a couple of weeks now, and it's really, I'm glad it's like at the point of happening. I'm super excited to share it, but it's also like I've been welling with excitement about it because it gives people the opportunity to see parts of your work that aren't currently known. And I think a lot of people know a lot of your images because they're so striking as well, and like they definitely kind of pin to mine. So I was pretty excited knowing that there's also these portrait works, which you've been doing over the past 10 years and stuff that people can be more privy to and probably get a bit more light onto some stuff. And it's actually just like a real celebration of your work as well, which is the excitement to be able to kind of celebrate you in this way. So as soon as I got asked to do it, I was like, yeah, I definitely want to do it.
Thank you for that, lovely.
No problem. I'm just going to share with everybody a short clip sent over by Katie Bruce, the curator at GOMA, which is the Gallery of Modern Art in Glasgow. Let's put this on. Give that shit.
At the Gallery of Modern Art in Glasgow, where Ajamu was our artist in residence in 2009. I first was introduced to Ajamu's work through Equality Network and Sam Rankin, who was particularly interested in the archive ruckus that he created along with Topher Campbell. At the time, we had put a call out for an artist in residence as part of the exhibition program and the outreach program we were doing. And Ajamu applied for this and was such an outstanding candidate that we were really pleased to be able to bring him on board to be an artist in residence at the gallery for 6 months, since he was split between Trongate 103 and GOMA. And his focus for that time was looking at Black visibility, particularly with the LGBT community in Glasgow. And he wanted to create a series of portraits that were studio portraits, develop his practice further, which ended up being the exhibition Familiar Strangers, which was shown in our balcony spaces and were one of the final 2 exhibitions, along with A Spot of Bother, which was the other artist in residence, Sandra Allen. Their work was shown there. And Strangers was an incredibly powerful body of work that's within the Central Gallery. And following this, we decided to bring 3 of works into the collection. So they're in the Glasgow Museum's collection, and one of those is a self-portrait of Ajamu. Unfortunately, I was off for a fair bit during maternity at that time, but Ajamu and I kept up conversations as he was due back in Glasgow for the residency. But equally, whenever he was visiting, I was down in London, we would catch up. And years we had conversations, continuing some of the things that were out within Shout, around about visibility, queer presences, but also that idea of joy and intimacy and activism within a lot of artists' work that he knew and that we were interested in pursuing. And it was a really, I suppose it was one of those conversations that led to the After Dark. I had curated an exhibition, Polygraphs, which looked at truth and fact and fiction in artists' work, but also as a way of looking at complex issues that are either local or global. And through conversations with Ajamu, I invited him to take part in the programme for that exhibition, and After Dark grew out of that. It was an interesting proposal. Ajamu had, I think he was by pushing the boundaries of what would normally happen within the gallery and the public space, because he basically asked me to let him and 5 other artists access into the building after we were closed for a private conversation that even our staff were not able to take part in. So again, really excited by what he was thinking about, but also that idea of public and private spaces, but also who has access into those. And so after it took place as PI in 2018 and was live cast out through Instagram. Again, it was a really homage to the After Darks that happened in the 1980s. So that idea of people being left in their own with a bit of alcohol and what kind of conversations might be prompted by their environment or the relationships between the artists themselves. Most recently, we had a meeting just before lockdown. And by chance, I found out he was going to spend some time with Matthew and the Bothy on the Isle of Egg. And it just seemed perfect opportunity to ask Matthew, part of the commission that he has been doing for us, documenting artists in our collection, to take a portrait of Ajamu. And the works that resulted come into the collection as this, and we now have some really beautiful portraits, which I believe Matthew put out the other day, will come in digitally into the collection for us to be able to develop that commission with him. And it's a really beautiful way, I suppose, longer term conversations coming into fruition, but being recognised and archived within a city's museum collection.
So yeah, that was another nice introduction to kind of the work that you was doing once you got into Glasgow.
Yes.
And prior to that, and getting going with like the Future Histories project. So do you want to, I don't know if you want to just kind of like start with just like your process once you kind of got in, and like the thoughts that you was thinking about, you know, getting into the city and wanting to capitalize on the residency, but wanting to meet other Black and brown queer people in the city and stuff. Yeah. Now begin sharing some of the footage.
Well, I'm the background to the Future Histories project. For me, a lot of the dialogues or histories around a Black British experience tend to be very much like I'm English focused, and so I wanted to try and get a sense of kind of other kinds of Black experiences outside of the context of England. And this project was about making links with artists and activists, cultural workers, and also I felt that a lot of the work that was being done at Scotland around the time was around refugees and asylum seekers, and I kind of wanted to bypass that kind of dialogue to find out what else was going on, assess of the space, assess of histories, assess of people who came and lived and worked in Scotland. Also, I'm from people who were born and raised in Scotland and Glasgow as well. And the work kind of came out of that. And then also a lot of my thinking over the last few years linked to this project is about how the archive is not about the past, and the archive is about the future. And so I'm part of my curiosity is I'm always around, and if I do these portraits of X amount of folks, where will they be traveling to over 5, 10, 20 years? And I'm so really kind of that's part of it is that to get a sense of people's stories. And then also for me, the one thing that the work cannot capture is because it's all off frame, is those dialogue with strangers then I was having in the context of the studio. And so I'm really I would just getting a sense of kind of that Scottish experience, and the portraits also draw upon the history of portraiture from the 19th century. I was looking at the work of Edward S. Curtis at this point. So basically, a lot of your portraits from that early 19th century period, people are looking left or right. So then actually part of the work is then to also draw upon a particular kind of studio practice that was around that period as well.
And they're all stunning portraits. I mean, I got the chance to see them in your studio and just seeing the contact sheets of them as well. And just kind of like, I guess the power, you can take portraits of people and you can do a lot with it, but there's obviously the angle which you're using. I think it's really telling that these people are putting their trust in you. You have this opportunity when you're taking portraits, but it's just like there's a real beauty in them and people are really giving in them. I'll just share a couple of the contact sheets that we've got here.
And also I'm from some of the portraits. I've taken the image slightly under the model as well. There is a sense it's in so many cases that you have to look up towards the people in the frame as well. And so scale is very important to how the work looks and feel. And this is portraits of Gamley and his wife Nana. I think her name is. And this work was not part of the exhibition, but actually kind of part of my work is also trying to shoot portraits and from people in front of my camera for themselves as well. Yeah. And so so basically there's these kind of other archives existing around the work that people won't get to see. And so hence kind of I'm showing these contact sheets. You then get a sense of kind of part of my process of trying to capture something from the person in front of my camera. And this is Harriet Campbell, who's formed a whole range of groups in Glasgow from the 70s, 80s, 90s.
It was just like
onward,
there's that opportunity of being able to see these extra pictures that don't make it through to the exhibition, and kind of just being in awe of them as well as their own kind of like entities.
Yes.
That just kind of that drew me into it. I knew we've got a whole series of the ones that finally made it through, but they have their own power, and it's really nice to see these characters, and it's really nice to kind of like give them that moment as well.
Yes.
There's a phrase that you kind of you say when we were talking about Maud Sota, and I'll bring it now. We'll talk about it again later. But it's like giving people their flowers, or like due the flowers, and it's kind of nice as well for this. It's in this moment, in this kind of recording that will probably be like stored on later on. It's just like giving these people their flowers, almost.
Yes. Well, I think for me there is lots of people doing really amazing work, and that we will never get to hear, and that's one thing. I think that there's also people doing amazing work who don't get kind of acknowledged for the work they're doing, and then there's still a way how people are erased or silenced or sidestepped. So part of my work is I'm always around kind of what are the kind of the ideas or the people experiences that I guess I'm excluded.
Yeah.
So then my work is then always about creating the kind of portraits that I need to see, and then also part of my practice is a way to try and say thank you to people who inspire me as well. So basically, it's not just about the portraits. It's also saying, well, actually, thanks for also doing your great work. And so really, there's just multiple dialogues happening around the photograph, off frame, in the studio, outside the gallery.
Yeah.
And my work is then trying to capture that energy, for want of a better word.
Yeah, definitely. I will share some more bits that you put up.
There's one of the beauties about being a photographer and doing portraits and then meeting people for the first time is that I get to hear their stories, and that's a part of kind of my creative process, is then just to listen and shoot and listen and shoot at the same time as well.
Which is, that's it again.
Yeah.
So with
what are you just is part of an ongoing series of dialogues, and we've been having and recording, and so basically we're just going to share bits of snippets of some of those dialogues that we've been having for some time now as well. Yeah.
And the work that kind of was in the show in the end, I mean, it's really beautiful when you look at the people who then kind of came back to see the show and see their work up on the walls, especially this one here of Beanie and her mum as well, being able to stand in it. And Beanie, was able to get in contact with Beanie and get one of her messages. I'll just read out what she said. Hang on, I can put it down. Bear with me. It's when you have so many files open and you can't find the one that you need.
Just take your time, we will get there.
It's always me. I got it. So at the time the photo was taken, and this would be of Beanie and Let's hunt it down. Not that one.
Yeah, there is.
You got it. So at the time this photo was taken, I was a fashion student at Central St. Martin's in London. Ajamu took this portrait shortly before I was offered an internship in Paris. I moved there in 2012 and still live there now, working as a set and spatial designer for a luxury shoe brand. Although I've been in France 8 years now, I speak French with a slight accent. I'm always so proud to say that I'm Scottish and grew up in Scotland. It will always be integral to who I am. Which is kind of, yeah, pretty amazing that, yeah, she was still able to get in contact with you in this way, and then, you know, just share something about her. But then also that's her mother in the picture, and just seeing them 8 years ago versus now in that way.
Yeah. Also, I think to me, I'm glad that we have managed to get hold of I'm being it, because I'm part of the work is like my own curiosity around where are they now kind of thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then because you do lose touch sometimes, every so often it's nice to trying to hear from someone that I met so long ago, just find out what's happening in terms of their lives now as well. And so really kind of, and there's a sense of these continuing dialogues kind of happening.
Of course, because when you do residencies or when you spend time in one place, you need to also kind of, it's always nice to touch base with people in that way, but also touch base with the work that you've done, because it's never ended. It's never it's complete once the project's done or the exhibition's down.
Yeah, and this is Jerry, who is a musician in Glasgow. I've forgotten the name, but I think she was a lawyer.
Yeah.
Or she was involved in law. Yeah. I
mean, there's loads of people, and you'll remember some names, but you won't remember them all. And we can't put your memory to test, but it's nice to kind of go back to it and see it all. But then there's these relationships that kind of happen. Obviously, the way that me and you met in that setting is, you know, just the way it kind of came about, with us both being in the facilities room of street level photo works and kind of crossing paths in that way. And you would have probably been in conversation then with some of the other projects that you were doing, and just so happened to be in passing and talking to Malcolm and Israel, and that's how new relationships are formed and kind of like added on to old ones as well.
Yes, yeah. Clear, yeah.
I mean, they're great pictures, all of them. I think they all, and it's nice as well when you saw them in street level. And I think there was a shot I just shared of it in.
Your sound. Yeah.
You hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah. Technology.
There was a point where, so these pictures being as amazing as they are, and you see them in the gallery at street level photo works, but I think I just showed a picture of it also in the African and Caribbean Centre, which is no longer in Trongate. It no longer exists the way it did, which is kind of a sad tale about kind of, I guess, gentrification in its own right. But it's interesting to see how it looks in the different spaces, or, you know, the vibe that it kind of gave off in a different place.
Yes. Well, basically, the African and Caribbean Centre. It's kind of not necessarily a gallery type space. So like music, events, DJ, dancing. So basically, the work was like I'm placed quite high up. And I'm also, for me, I also do like the idea that you have to kind of look up at these monuments, these statues, and so basically, and there's a way that the body has to move, try and look upwards. So then I kind of like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
and then because then this space is then no longer around in this time shape and form, that image then becomes this time document or this archive of then how the work looked in that particular space in that particular moment as well.
And then there's also that thing about archiving. I mean, you do archiving all the time. Your whole work is about archiving. But there's another picture of Noel and his grandfather, which I really think about. And like
his father,
his father even, sorry.
His father, yes.
Just being like a real testament of capturing something that is in a moment of changing or like just fleeting, and being able to look back at it and just kind of like dote on it in a different way. Those portraits are kind of they're so special in one way, that as individuals, because the ones before were just solo portraits, but then you kind of have these moments where you've got the two in the frame, even though that, I guess that wasn't what you were going for at the time. You wanted to see the individual, but no, you go on.
Well, I'm at this moment, Noel's father was wheelchair bound, quite unwell, and so he came to Glasgow, I think in the late 30s or the early 40s, and he played in a jazz band, and he was around the jazz scene in Glasgow at this time. And so really for me, it was just like great to be able to capture this image of father and son.
And bear witness.
And then just to kind of just watch and observe how they spoke, and then how they got on. And so really kind of once again, this goes back to those images that the public is not privy to, but then for Noel and his father, this is a very important document that I was able to have privy to take their portraits as father and son.
Definitely, just kind of like spellbound by them. I remember being in your studio, just being able to you kind of almost flippantly just pulled out the box of contact sheets. So this definitely needs to go into the talk. It's just kind of, special in its own right. And we're just able to catch these moments, which we would not have had the opportunity to beforehand. And maybe one day the show will be extended in another way, or just in a different way.
Yes, so and there's literally so much work and people have not seen, and I'm really kind of a challenge. I think for any kind of artist, photographer, is around what portrait kind of works, and then and there's no science to it, but there's just something around actually this image captures the thing that I'm trying to kind of convey, and all of those images that don't make it is still key to the whole process as well.
Share some more of. I think when you have so many files and so many pre-planned bits of the conversation, and you actually don't end up using them. But I'll continue sharing some of these. It's worth it for everybody to get a chance to see all the pictures that are in there. There's faces that I'm familiar with, and bear in mind I moved to Glasgow in 2014, and there's so many that I'm just not familiar with at all. Maybe they've left Glasgow, maybe they're not in the Central Belt anymore, or maybe they have their own stories. But it's interesting to see how a scene shifts.
Yeah, and then also some people have also died as well, and so really basically the actual portrait is then also there to remember people that's also no longer here as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because after pulling this work together, which the show you then dedicated to Maud Salter, I really recall, I think the reason why I brought that up into our conversation was I really recall that exhibition at Street Level Photo Works a couple of years later, her solo show, which they done this retrospective and they pulled all this material together. However, that was a doing because you and Deborah Cherry, who was doing some research into Maud's work, basically made that come to life. And it's really like telling by doing that what effect that has done to other people. And to me, for instance, in my work and just kind of like how I thought about exhibitions at that time, I remember going back to that show at least 3 times because it was interesting. And it was stuff that I wanted to see. And it came about because, you know, you was in conversation already with people who were researching and finding that stuff out.
Yeah.
I have an audio snippet.
Yeah, there's an audio snippet, yeah. One of the reasons why kind of the exhibition was dedicated to Maud Salter is because I felt that Maud had become almost invisible within a Scottish context, but within a wider context. And I'm at the time of the exhibition, Deborah Cherry was doing research at the Street Level archive around Maud's work. And this time there was the first time I had met Deborah Cherry. And so basically I started around conversation about let's try and do a project around Maud. And the conversation was then between myself, Deborah, Malcolm, and Autograph. And so really, that's what kind of came out of the Future Histories conversation. Is then a couple of years later, Street Level had an exhibition based around Maud's work. There was a show of Maud's work in Autograph, and then I produced a book on Maud's work called Passion. Yeah, and there was a couple of events at Autograph also around kind of Maud's work. And so really, for me, I'm a way that I kind of like to work is like ideally the project has these other kinds of tentacles. And so really actually sometimes it's just these moments of conversations then trigger something else kind of happening. Yeah. And then the more that I think about kind of the project we did around Maud, I either think about there are so many other Black female artists who have kind of disappeared or vanished. And so really this was to start a dialogue and to say, actually, there's these other artists, Susan Roden, Jennifer Comrie, Glenys Nielsen, there's a whole series of women artists that I think are also either they've not got their flowers. And so it's a great time to see kind of Maud getting her flowers. I have moments of thinking, what time would Maud make of all of this? Also, I have a feeling she probably would just laugh or just shake her head or do something. You know, Maud was fierce and awesome. Yeah, and so really kind of these projects just kind of allow other kinds of dialogues and time happen. And I think kind of that's how I think almost a decade later, we're in conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And even just thinking about that and that work then stemming into you actually doing the Queer Champions and the work that you've done then. And then also just like us working together and us talking about being in the landscape and stuff and talking about Ingrid Pollard's work. And then just seeing this picture here with you, all the kind of like friends of Maud in this kind of stance with Ingrid and Marcia and Marlene as well with Deborah Cherry. It's, yeah, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It always goes in these loops. Or you know, when we think about time, you know, you say stuff about, oh yeah, you know what actual time is, but sometimes you'll be like, oh, this isn't the right time. And I always think how time manages to do its own magic.
Yes.
In by creating certain things, yes, or being in the right place, yeah, at the right time, for instance. Yeah. The Queer Champions work as well, which kind of follows on from the work that you've done, Future Histories, kind of got set up again by, I guess, people in the Equality Network, and then
So I'm key to Queer Champions was Sam Rankin, and I really couldn't have done this work without the amazing work and that Sam was doing in Scotland around LGBT kind of Q. And so basically I'm for me, it's also around what then are the stories and experiences around Black and LGBT or queer folks living in the context of Scotland. And for me, I'm once again, a lot of the work for me, I always start from around paradigm whereby something is wrong and this needs to be fixed, right? Yeah, so then my work and for this work really then comes in around aspirations, celebrations, who are the actual queer folks creating queer culture in the context of Scotland, but mainly in the context of Glasgow.
Yeah,
I remember. So then, once again, it's the artists, it's the activists, it's the creatives, it's the drag queens. And so really kind of and then once again, it's then to understand a whole range of different experiences within the context of Glasgow. If you can know, once again, and there's ways that Black and queer experiences can never be silenced. And so my work is to say, actually, these folks are the ones that you need to watch out for. They're doing amazing work. Some of you know of these people already, and then some of you might not have heard of them. And so really kind of my work is about filling that gap.
Yeah.
And then once again, I'm working with very classical portraiture, and then the slight difference between the Future Histories work and then this work, and then have people more front on, and then looking more towards the camera, whereby in the Future Histories it was a more sideways, whereby this one I kind of wanted that and that kind of head to head contact. Yeah.
And you can see it straight away in each picture. And there is this kind of, I don't know, I remember you saying before about the people who was in the Future Histories project and what spaces were available to them at that time. And I guess that might have been a dialogue back in 2011. And I guess over the past 5-6 years, the conversation in Glasgow anyway has definitely been changing continuously, and that people have been looking at what are the queer spaces, what are the safe queer spaces, or what are the safe spaces for Black and brown bodies to be in, if there are any, and if not, why not? And you was kind of the people that you were photographing back at the Future Histories project in 2011, 2012 would probably say there wasn't a space there for them to be in. So it's kind of really interesting that you've also added that conversation into the style of portraiture that you've taken on this kind of approach to classical portraiture that's kind of styled off of traditional paintings or stuff that came from 19th century paintings of kings and queens in that setting, in which they are looking to the left, to the right, they are looking at something really distant, and you're giving these people this stature, you're giving them that power that is probably not actually always there for them.
Yeah, and I'm also, it's around how does a exhibition also create another kind of space and to have all kinds of dialogues as well.
Okay, great. What I'll do is introduce Mobile into the chat. One of the people from the Future Histories project Let's see.
Wow, I've actually not seen Morbo since I took the portrait, so it would be great to.
What we'll do is we'll chat with him and then we'll show his portrait afterwards as well.
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hello,
Morbo.
how you doing? Long time.
Yeah, it has been a while. How you keeping?
I'm keeping well. How you? Can you hear us clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. Is the internet bad here?
No, it's okay. It's just there's always a little delay somewhere along the line, so it's completely fine. Yeah, so we were talking about, I mean, you was in the Future Histories project in 2011, 2012. Do you want to just probably just introduce and just say how old you were back then and so
How
forth?
did we meet again? I think I stopped you on the street or something, or something was happening. I have no idea, so remind me.
I think so. At the time that was 2012. So at the time I would have been 20. And yeah, I think you stopped me in the street. And then from there, we went to, like, you came down to the art school and then
That's
we
right,
went
yes.
down somewhere in the Merchant City somewhere to get the pictures. And to me, it was a great experience. First of all, at the art school, I had been doing a little bit of modeling for like the fashion department and stuff. And it was like an amazing experience to have a Black photographer like stopping me and asking to take my picture, and also for what it was for as well, like the whole idea behind the project. And overall, it was a great experience. It just really shown me that there's so much more that I can use my creativity for as well. And then the project to me too, and in regards to what I'm doing right now. So I work up in music now. I graduated from the art school maybe 3 years ago, 3 years ago. Put all of that behind me, and started just working towards things that I feel would further lay tracks for people similar to myself that want to do something similar to me. And now also during this month, we're doing a photo series, which is all about highlighting Black creatives mainly, or the Black diaspora in Scotland as well. And our thinking behind that project was that during Black History Month, usually we get reminded about the history of Black people from the perspective of the British colony, or from the West especially, which often has to do with the slave trade. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like we are making history as we are existing and as we're creating space for ourselves and for other people within the community. And for us, it's sort of like, I really love this project as well, like the idea of archiving too, because it's our way of adding to the collective consciousness, which we're able to also tap into and use for healing. And I feel like, especially now during this time period, it's really important for us to just add to that collective consciousness by creating, by documenting. And yeah, it's been fun.
That's great.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely. The project that you're doing just now as well is really cool, and it's almost followed on from the legacy that is the work that Ajamu kind of already kind of like put together, or like kind of, as you said, it was nice to see a Black photographer doing this kind of work. But actually, the work that you're doing now is actually just equally as important, and it's this way of archiving the history and things that are currently present as well, in this way of using an archive in the future. The way that you talk about it, Ajamu, is just like you're archiving, thinking about the present, thinking about the future, and also still considering what has come in the past. So yeah, it's nice to hear you say it.
To hear you and see you again.
Yeah, definitely.
Me too. With the project now, have you got people that you've taken pictures of, or are you still looking to collect and get in touch with people?
No, that project kind of ended. I'm at that particular point, but I've been floating around idea with Matthew about another kind of series of portraits that I want to do again in Glasgow. And so I'm hopefully at some point, and there will be a new series of portraits, and that will kind of take place in Scotland somewhere, and we have fantasy space that I can't talk about yet.
Okay.
And so we will see what happens there. But yeah, it's great to see you.
Yeah, thanks for getting mobile.
And thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
No problem at all. Great to speak to you again.
Yeah. We'll chat soon.
Yes. I will talk soon. Thank you.
Speak soon.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Right, yeah. Wow.
That's cool. Yeah, that's nice to also bring that back in that way. There's it's cool, like the way in which I guess some people know your work, some people might not know your work, but if the people that don't know your work, you've done Fierce Toronto, you've done so many of these portrait series, you've done stuff in London now, and it's just traveled around the world, and you now have these families of people around, and I'm always kind of like in admiration for your energy, because it really requires, and like when people talk about activism and like when you think about the word an activist or activism, and it comes with this loaded baggage of what it must look like to, be an activist or activism. It's actually the fact that you're just over the years, this is no shade.
It goes back to your question from last week.
No shade, but the fact that you've been actively making work since the 80s.
Your words were, you've been doing this for a very long time. That was your word.
With the kindest heart I'm saying this with. And just really doing the work, but in other ways, by just having an active and an energetic way about your practice, and in turn that that is the activism.
I think for me, there is always going to be around what are the kind of images I need to see, and that's first and foremost, and what is missing, and then the thing around the future histories, queer champions and Fierce Toronto, Fierce Sao Paulo is also around how do you see these experiences within a transnational diasporic kind of context. And so almost actually I'm part of my work over the years is then try and create this like a pop-up studio. And so I'm actually the work in Sao Paulo, Durban, I'm Toronto. It was about turning my hotel room into the pop-up studio. And then that's where the portraits were taken. That's where the dialogues were happening. And so really, it's always about joining up these dots. Yeah, right? And then because then actually our experiences, our archives are similar and different. And so really, there's these archives within archives, and then my work is about kind of adding to it. And then also key to their work is I'm not just kind of the content. For me, it's also about having a dialogue around process and aesthetics and beauty. Mm-hmm. It's because then also those ideas get pushed to one side because there is an obsession. I was always talking about Black and brown queer work in terms of its content, in terms of that socio-cultural history, I'm saying, and also let's talk about creative process, aesthetics and beauty, making the work. Mm-hmm. And so really, all of that is in the mix, so to speak. And then also to have other kinds of conversations and dialogues is because I get frustrated and pissed off about certain things.
I mean, it's natural. It's natural. There will be times in which you have to vent and rant it out.
Exactly.
Okie dokie. So I guess time is not our friend.
Yeah.
But no, I get you totally. And it was one great to have this opportunity to do a residency with you in which we were talking about these things anyway, and then also to kind of I think once we went to the Isle of Egg together, for the people who don't know, part of the Buffy project and the transmission residency. And I think once we were on the ferry, we kind of had to have a laugh to be like, okay, this is great, because one, we can talk about all of this other stuff, but we can really, I think it was two photographers sat down and we were talking about process in a way. And I mean, we could talk about imperialism and colonialism as well, and how that plays out for us being on this island. But it was also nice to watch you work and watch me work. And so we then were able to take portraits and do some other work on the island. And I don't know about you, but I mean, that was really rewarding for me.
I had a great time.
Yeah, the project itself was, I think, yeah, incredible to kind of go in. I think you was in the back of my mind from the get-go that I was going to ask you to be a part of it. But when I kind of met up with the other people and part of it and who their collaborators were, it actually just seemed quite magical and perfect at that moment in time. Or like the amount of times we kind of bumped into each other in passing, and I wasn't able to kind of come to your studio when I was in London many times, just because when you're in another place, sometimes you get caught up. But to find out that the other people were collaborating with like Ingrid Pollard and Labaina Hamid and Alberta Whittle and so forth, and I had you in mind, and it's just bringing these names and these people back with the work, and it kind of felt fitting. But being on Egg was pretty good. I'll show you the audience some of those shots that we were able to do. If I can work this computer. Yeah, that's fine. It's funny because what the audience can't hear is our mic behind our go-to guy, which is John Farrell, working the controls, but I still have to do all this extra stuff. I kind of wish he could play around with the computer and do it for me.
That will happen at some point.
At award shows, who knows? So this is us on the way across to Egg, and yeah, capturing you in the moment there. I think for this, I mean, that trip, how was it for you? I mean, the opportunity to get out of London must have been, great, but also it came at a time where COVID hadn't really taken a full grasp, and that kind of looming threat was kind of, bubbling under the surface of actually what's coming next. But for me, I kind of had a lot of anxiety going to an island of that size, for one, but just thinking about viruses and virus spreading and things like that. So there was a whole lot of extra weight that kind of brought to it. But fortunately, I mean, we was able to kind of make some work together, in which I was able to take this portrait of you. And I mean, you've mentioned how the nude in itself was out of my comfort zone. There's some shots, there's some stuff in my old catalogue which I haven't really put out in ages of nudes, so it wasn't too out of my comfort zone. But it was really nice to be able to capture you in this setting, and I was really adamant that there was something that I wasn't going to do, was the thing where we've spoken about what have you seen before, and what I'd seen before was Black bodies in fields, in agricultural fields, in labor and duress. And what I really was adamant in my mind that wasn't going to happen was that you were going to have this pose of being really like thought-provoking. I wanted to capture some joy, and I wanted to really capture you being able to take in this landscape as you wanted. And I know it was cold, but you still kind of bared with me.
It was bloody freezing.
You welcomed the opportunity, so it gave me some insight into your character.
It was freezing. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
all I'm saying.
Yeah. But this portrait, I mean, I wanted to capture something that really was,
beautiful,
some joy and just having a moment in that field. And I mean, you had the opportunity to also photograph me there too. I don't know if you want to mention any bit about the process or anything there.
Well, for me, if I was a chance to, I'm to hear or to see how you were working through your kind of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's something for me around what happens when the body touches the landscape and the landscape also touches the body. And that then means then actually, and there has to be a different kind of awareness and attunement to the actual space that you are in, and then how would that then inform how the image might present itself. And so really those were the kind of dialogues we were having.
Yeah. And we were talking, yeah.
And there was a question around I'm trying to create a list of Black or brown artists who've done work in the landscape as well. And then also, of course, Ingrid's work I'm kept in mind, but I really could just get to the fact who was also rethinking the landscape, and then also they're thinking a body also as a form of landscape as well. And so those were the ideas that we were having in the cold, in the wet.
Yeah.
Seeing the sheep.
I mean,
all this kind of, yeah.
Definitely. Ingrid's work was really in the forefront. Pastoral interludes and work like that was, there. And then there was like filmmakers I was thinking of, and current people who they use photography, but they use their body a lot, like Jade Montserrat and Ria Storr. And there was a lot of other things I was kind of, floating around. And then, but also we kind of was talking about traditional photographers, or like thinking about, like, I guess landscape, or like people who'd use stuff in the 20th century, like Bill Brandt and Ansel Adams and all of that stuff.
Yes.
And it was nice to kind of have those conversations and think about traditional photography and as well as contemporary photography, and then how it overlaps, because actually everything is always interconnected and it's always there at the moment of taking these pictures.
Yes. So I'm key is what is then the history of this kind of work in terms of photography, and then how you fit into that history. That was dialogue, and then also then what then is your point of departure from those histories also. And so all of that was in there as well.
There's some questions, I think, because we're coming up to the hour. I'm going to pop some in. I'll try and read some. Question from Alan Kelly. Some great portraits, Ajamu. Thank you. What equipment were you using? Lighting?
So I was using, in terms of lighting, it was a Bowens kit, a very basic kit. And then my camera at this time was a RB67 medium format. And I think the film might have been Agfa or a Fuji black and white film. Yeah.
What else is there? I mean, there's just some really nice comments. Been chopped in Gozi saying Black legions of the Roman Empire were protecting the Antonine Wall. We've been here time.
Yes.
That's true.
Yeah.
And Claire Robertson, who I think might have been in the pictures. Great event. So lovely.
Yes, so Claire is one of the Claire is with Beanie in that picture. Yeah. A musician. Yeah.
Great story. So love to see this strong body of portraiture again and hear the stories that have emerged since it was created. We are creating and recreating history is so important at this time when the veil is being lifted. Very, very true. And then there was, the work, I guess, on Egg and stuff, if you still want to keep talking about that, or if you want to
And a
wrap up
portrait
with
of
that.
you.
And you've seen I've obviously hidden that from the public's view because, you know, I need to have some grace somewhere. But you were, you know, it was really nice to watch you kind of watch me and like cross over how each one of us take portraits or take work, and just kind of in the moment just hand over and kind of let that flow. And that it also kind of like I don't know, or gives you some kind of validation when there's somebody who you really admire being able to work in just a very close proximity in just a very casual way. It's really kind of like it validates what you want to do, and it validates what you are doing in some way as well. So it was, for me, great. And I was then able to then input that into my work once you had left the island. And like the conversations which we had day after day, was able to then go back in and capture it and do these portraits that I wanted to do. But I mean, bearing in mind what we kind of discussed.
Yeah.
And kind of leave people with this kind of self-portrait, which you've also taken on your side, and then me on this side.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. If there's any more questions, if anybody wants to float stuff through, we can. Oh, it's coming through. Okay. It's just typing it. I feel like maybe I've missed something as well. I wonder what I could grill you about in the meantime.
Don't grill me about anything.
Yeah. Oh, I'll try and relay that. So our Peter had a question in the role of photography in, or like as we've both been working in photography for quite a while, but you, Ajamu, specifically, I reckon. I'll try and read that back properly. I'm not so good at listening to audio and then relaying it. So what I'll do.
No, I don't actually. I think that the role of the photographer is to still document or create the work that he, she, or they need to see. Yeah, right. And I'm, for me, I cannot see that changing. No, I can't see that changing. It really is to still to create the images, to tell those stories that we still don't hear. I'm trying always to drill down within your Black experiences, your queer experiences, and so on and so forth. I'm trying to get into those layers and then try and then create work, and that kind of highlights those things that are still missing. And then also, I think for me, I would love to hear more photographers to talk about process, making of the image. Those are the ideas that I'm kind of really interested in as well. Just so that we don't always get locked into the content.
Yeah.
Because the photograph is also an object into those layers as well. And those are the ideas. Yeah. That's me. That's my voice from something.
I agree.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, Matthew, yeah.
No, go on.
No, go on.
No, I was just going to say I agree. And just to echo that, it's just like there are still, I always feel like technology moves on, and yet we aren't able to still. There are so many people left out of the conversation, and there's so many stories that haven't been told in a certain format. So I'm really interested in, like, I'm still really interested in slide projection, or there's just certain ways of storytelling. So I don't think.
Yeah, and for me, I think my final point is I think that for me, the photographs, they're like breadcrumbs actually, and the people they could then get back to something or kind of just see actually this was happening in this particular moment. And so hence it's like Hansel and Gretel is breadcrumbs. It's visual breadcrumbs, and then that's what we then constantly try and find and then create work once again that we need to see, even if people don't want to see that work, even if it raises issues that I'm uncomfortable. The artist, I think in this moment also, I think photography and visuals is probably more urgent in this particular moment also. So hence we need to continue to create work. Yeah.
Well, that's been fantastic. If it's okay if I intervene at this point, is that okay?
Yeah, of course. We could actually keep talking and talking. I know me.
You could. But we'll probably wind it up now if that's okay. But there's been another couple of comments, and because of you mentioned technology, Matthew, because of the delay between the Facebook and the Zoom and all the rest of it, comment in from Alberta Whittle. Thank you so much for the stellar conversation. Makes me think so much of ancestral history ties and how these links of generosity in both of your processes give so much hope to us audiences. Flannery or Kafka says, great talk, that portrait on egg, 100% reads life and joy.
Yeah.
Love to hear the background specifically, subverting how black bodies have been pictured in fields. Now that's a big area of conversation, I think, which both of you are actually working upon. So maybe we'll just close it there. I'd like to thank the both of you, but I'd like to thank Zandra Harry Crayer, Coalition for Racial Equality and Rights, who are organising Black History Month, do a fantastic job every year. Black History Month is a focus of issues, but these things are a continuum and go on throughout the year and all time. Also, thanks also to Bian Robertson for contributing her comment, and to Claire for being the liaison there, and to Mobo, who made an interesting comment, I suppose, that very much in alignment to what you have been talking about, we're making history as we live. And that, of course, is the case. And I'd like to close with a quote from Ajamu himself, who says that we write and record everything. No, I'll rephrase that. Write and record everything you do. No one is going to write our histories for us. And that's very important to remember that and use that as a catalyst to moving forward. So thank you again, the audience. Thank you, Matthew and Ajamu. That was fantastic. Seamless presentation. Thank you for sharing the work with us. And
thank you, Malcolm, and
for the audience.
Thanks for coordinating and putting it together.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah. This is being recorded. It will be uploaded on Facebook and on YouTube. There'll be a slight trimming on YouTube. So the audience will be able to go back and watch this again. So thanks to everyone. Do tune in next week, where we have Wendy Ewald, noted American-based photographer who works on collaborative projects with various communities, alongside Noni Stacey, who will talk about some of the radical collectives from the 1970s. So thanks again, and we will see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Right.
Bye. 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 Bye.